Thank you both. Any questions about that? I'd like to read this off and I can take care of that. Then you'll have the. Thank you. Yeah, I'll ask them. Back to their badges. We'll let them know that. So much we got that. We'll have. Correct, because it'll take over. Great. We'll have time. Perfect. Questions about it? Yeah. Perfect. Well, again, I'm just showing it.
Like, I'll just tell Naylor to move. Taking up too much interest. It's me.
Good morning, everyone. I know folks are taking their seats. Just want to welcome you to the final day of the APDS. We had a great conclave yesterday. Folks were stuck here in the hotel all day. It was our surgical education conclave. And for those of you who are staying for the ASE, that'll continue for its second day for you today. I want to thank the ASE for their incredible collaboration in setting up everything today, including our great transitional panel that includes both APDS and ASE members. And you'll see that here about the surgical families. So that'll kick off their meeting starting at noon. I do hope you have a chance to be here during Jerome Adams' talk as well. They'll be having kind of a fireside type chat and the ability to ask some probing questions about leadership in turbulent times, and certainly he has had great experience in that. Well, this morning we've got tools of the trade for those of you who have the QR codes on the back for the research committee and program committee. Please do grade these. We sincerely appreciate that. I want to make sure that all the speakers are as close to the front as possible because much like last evening with the quick shots, we're going to be at rapid pace and our moderators will keep things rolling. Your CME is available in the app. And so please get that done by June 24th. Obviously, there'll be emails and reminders that'll be coming out. But thank you all for staying through with the final day of the APDS. And for those of you staying for ASE, do enjoy. If you have any questions or recommendations or comments, please seek me out. So, gentlemen, thank you.
Good morning. We'll get started with Dr. Tan from the University of Wisconsin with the Healthy Minds Program, a feasible and scalable well-being intervention.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. So we know that stress, burnout, and poor well-being is a huge problem in medicine, and many of us have probably experienced that. Things we know about this problem is that it starts in medical school and worsens through residency training. And this has far-reaching consequences on the quality of patient care we give, physician attrition in the workforce, and downstream healthcare costs. Now, meditation-based interventions, or MBIs, can improve physician well-being and have been shown to be feasible in residents. However, there are significant barriers to implementation in residency, as MBIs are traditionally in person, which requires significant resources such as infrastructure and time. Smartphone-based interventions provide a potential solution by having similar benefits to in-person interventions with the advantage of being free from physical constraints. And thus they can be used to conduct remote studies. The intervention we studied was the Healthy Minds Program, or HMP, which is a smartphone app developed by the University of Wisconsin Center for Healthy Minds. It's a 4-week intervention that involves weekly lessons and guided meditation practices. An advantage of this app is that it has flexible session lengths, as little as 5 minutes, and can be used while doing daily activities such as walking to work or doing the dishes. So we sought to determine the effectiveness of a smartphone-based MBI on improving resident stress and well-being, and hypothesized that residents given the Healthy Minds program would show greater improvement in stress and well-being than controls. We conducted a nationwide randomized clinical trial in 2024. Participants were U.S. residents in a frontline high burnout specialty listed here, and we excluded anyone who used the app before or had regular meditation practice. We stratified by baseline stress level and specialty of surgery versus medicine, and then we randomized participants one-to-one to the control group who received a list of well-being resources and the intervention, which was the HMP app for 4 weeks. We collected measures at baseline, weeks 1 through 4, and at 3-month follow-up. Our primary outcome was stress, and our secondary well-being outcomes included burnout, loneliness, sleep, flourishing, resilience, and meaning and purpose. We used piecewise linear mixed effect models to look at our primary outcome and linear regression models to look at our secondary outcomes, with using false discovery rate p-value adjustments to account for the number of outcomes. We enrolled and randomized 508 participants. The majority were women and white, 41 states were represented, and almost half were in a surgery specialty. So when looking at our primary outcome of stress over time, we found a treatment effect at post-treatment week 4, when the HMP group, shown here in the dark blue, had significantly greater reductions in stress compared to controls in the orange. However, this effect was not sustained at 3-month follow-up. When looking at our negative well-being outcomes of burnout, loneliness, and sleep disturbance, we found a similar pattern where the HMP group had significantly greater reductions at week 4. However, this effect was not sustained at 3 months follow-up after p-value adjustments. And for the positive well-being outcomes of flourishing, resilience, and meaning and purpose, we again found the HMP group had significantly greater improvements at week 4 post-treatment, but this was not sustained at follow-up. When looking at app usage of minutes meditated, participants practiced for an average of 10 days for about 5 to 6 minutes of those days. This is similar to other Healthy Minds program studies. And in an exploratory analysis of dosage effects, we found minutes of meditation was associated with decreased loneliness at 3-month follow-up in linear regression models. So in conclusion, we found that HMP improves stress and well-being in the short term without sustained effects in the long term. So when thinking about the implications of our findings, short-term effects can be important for residents in that residency stress is often situational. It's based on the rotations we're on, who we're working with, and life stressors. The HMP app is free and publicly available right now. So if a resident has a rotation coming up that they know will be stressful, this could be relieving for that period of time. And we see these effects with really low time investment of only 5 minutes a day for 10 days. And then when thinking about the long-term effects, it's not surprising that a short behavioral intervention did not have long-term effects. However, our results differ from prior HMP studies showing sustained effects in other populations. And further research is really necessary to understand the factors that promote this in residents, such as tailored interventions, sustained engagement with programmatic support, and we know individual interventions need to be coupled with organizational and systemic change for resident well-being. So thank you so much to my mentorship team here. A huge shout out to my co-residents, Dr. O'Rourke, and all the program directors who helped with recruitment and making this study possible. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Morning, Josh Rochelle, UTMB. Awesome talk. For your point about engagement, did you do any A/B testing on push notifications and whether or not general surgery residents would respond to them in order to do their meditation?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So the app does send daily reminders if you elect to do that. And we did ask people in the study who use the app to use the reminders, but we didn't do any testing on the back end of like whether those who chose to use reminders used it more, but that's a good question to bring to the people at the app to see if that's something that's feasible and possible. But it is something that when we did interviews at the end of this study that we're currently working on, and so residents have brought up that the reminders both have been helpful and not helpful, as in it's like annoying with, varying schedule times, rotation times. And then other people were like, oh, I loved having the reminder, so.
I enjoyed your study. I think wellness is very important. My question is, you had a control group that you gave literature. Do you know how many, did you like find out how many people actually took advantage of it? And then were you able to find out from your program, how many people use the program during their daily, for their notifications and things like that, for the whole project, to compare actually who actually did it and who did not?
Yes, so for the control group, they got a list of well-being resources, which included like book recommendations, videos to watch, without any meditation sort of practices. And we asked after post-treatment week 4, how many people actually used any of those resources, and we had about 50% of those people who used it. For the actual Healthy Minds program, we did have ability to track how much they used it, and so that's where we got the average of 10 days for 5 minutes a day.
Okay, thank you.
To try to
Thank you.
keep us on time, we're gonna have to move on to our next presentations.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Dr. Anise from Abington Hospital Jefferson Health. The title is Keeping Duty Hours in Hand, Exploiting Texting to Ensure Compliance.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present. So as most of you know, there's a huge problem in the academic workspace where a lot of residents don't report accurate duty hours, and there's no fixed mechanism that works really well to record these duty hours. We, in the past, had used new innovations to have residents record duty hours, but the issue with that was that a lot of residents would log them retrospectively, and they would log 6 to 6 every single day. And these weren't accurate, as we know from real time. So in our 22-23 survey, we had 14 violations for duty hours, and in our corresponding HCGME survey, we had 3 citations for duty hours, despite having a lower number of violations objectively. So we put our minds together and set out to come up with a plan where we can record duty hours in real time and make interventions if any resident was going over hours. And this was also done to improve compliance with the HCGME regulations and to understand what exactly was going on. So this was done at our program, which is an academic medical center associated with Jefferson, and it's a 31-resident Gen Surg program. The idea here was that we would send out automated texts every day to their work phones, since residents are always on their phones, to reply with their duty hour for the day prior. This was sent around between 8 and 8:30 a.m., hopefully before they're in the OR. And we were able to transcribe that data from the text to Excel sheet at the end of every week. And at the end of every month or every block, we would send out a notification to confirm that these residents were complying with their duty hours. So for example, if there was if you were in a 4-month block, we would say that, did you have 4 days off in the past block? And did you ever go over 28 hours on a call shift? So that the residents can confirm that they did not go over hours or violate any HCGME regulations. This was what the text looked like. You get it every morning like clockwork, and it's automated. And this is what the Excel sheet looks like. So here you see that on the top, you have the resident over here, and then here is a week. This is the number of hours they worked that week. This is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., for example. And the color scheme represents what shifts they're on. So we have a night float system. So the red here represents night float, the purple represents a 12-hour Sunday shift, and the red here represents a 24-hour shift. And the blue helps us understand what days they have off. So if there's 4 blues in a block, we know that they have 4 days off in that month. After we implemented this, initially there was some resistance from residents, and it was hard to have them text back. But eventually, we saw an improved response and real-time data on how they were recording their duty hours. We only had 9 violations compared to greater than 15 before. And these were mostly discovered by the program leadership themselves and not the residents. And because of this real-time data, we were able to enact change right away. So for example, if we saw on Friday that a resident was going over hours that week, we would, if they were on call on the Saturday, we would switch their call to a different call and move bodies around. And because of this, in our following survey, we were able to get rid of three of our duty hour citations. Talking numbers, in all the three ACGME requirements, the 80-hour compliance, we went up from 61% to 93%. The same for the 1 day off and 7-day compliance, and the 28-hour shift compliance also went up to 93% from 75%. And all of these numbers exceed or match the national specialty averages for general surgery. We understood from this that texting, because we're on our phones all the time, really maximizes accuracy and improves engagement. It allows real-time interventions and prevents violations. And we could go as far as to say that in our ACGME survey wellness data and our internal survey wellness data, residents reported improved wellness. There were obviously confounding factors about other changes we had made in the program, but this, we think, also boosted our wellness. The limitations were that there were occasional misreplies and there were unforeseen circumstances that prevented us from moving residents around. And there was some initial resistance from residents, which happens with most programs. And I think the future where we're trying to go with this is that where we want to extrapolate the data from our texting and have it logged automatically to the Excel sheet and get alerts and automations as to when a resident is going over time. Because at this point in time, our program director logs these hours manually at the end of every week. So going towards that future would be great, and I think it's a great project for us to work on. Just to summarize, I think this is a great scalable model for most residency because it is, again, helps us prevent duty hour violations, which can be very common in a lot of programs, especially in surgical programs. And once we get this automated, I think it's going to be a great way to log duty hours without a lot of manual labor. Thank you.
Hi, Dave Edelman from Detroit. I enjoyed your talk. The 9 residents that still log duty hour violations in real time that you said your program director had to tell those residents, since they logged them, how come they were not aware that they were going to violate?
So great question. So at the end of every month, the residents sometimes are not aware that they did not get 4 days off in that month. And in real time, they didn't realize that because they weren't counting the hours themselves at the end of the week. So if they went over 80 hours, they might have not realized. That's how the program leadership picked it up before them, because they could see the hours in real time when they couldn't.
Okay, and then you said that if someone worked too many hours on Friday and they were on call Saturday, they just got to take the Saturday call off. How did your other residents feel about having to pick up an extra Saturday night call?
So initially there was some resistance, and I personally have been a victim of that. But I think eventually, because that was changed around, they would also benefit from it in the future and would not go over hours. They were okay with it. But that wouldn't happen very often. So for example, if they were going over hours in week 1, in week 3, they might get their call taken away. It won't be the next day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, Dr. Holland from Medical College of Wisconsin, presenting on the impact of a formalized AB site remediation program on resident score improvement.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present. We have no disclosures. The ABSITE is a multiple choice examination that tests the understanding and management of surgical problems that was initially developed to assess resident knowledge progression and preparedness for board examination. However, in recent years, there's been an increased emphasis placed on the ABSITE performance for fellowship applications, which has led this to be a high-pressure exam for residents. Our institution did not have a formalized remediation program for our residents prior to the 2023 to 2024 academic year, and we saw that score improvement with initial low scores was uncommon. Given this, we aim to investigate the impact of a structured remediation program on resident ABSITE performance at our institution. For our 2023 to 2024 pilot intervention, 10 residents at our institution met criteria for remediation and were placed into a formal program for this pilot year. The program consisted of assigned monthly 50-question quizzes through a purchased question bank repository, scheduled faculty one-on-one meetings with development of individualized learning plans, and a 250-question mock site that was held several months prior to the examination to identify target study areas for improvement. 5 additional residents at our program who requested to utilize the same question bank but did not meet criteria for remediation served as our control group. Following the 2024 ABSITE, question bank usage and mock ABSITE performance were compared to the ABSITE performance standardized to the national median for resident training year. For this year, we found that 8 of our 10 residents in remediation improved their percent of questions correct compared to the national median for their training year, and 5 of these residents improved their score enough to no longer require remediation. We found the greatest score improvement was seen after completion of 1,500 questions that were completed gradually throughout the year rather than in bulk leading right up to the examination. We also saw that a higher mock ABSITE performance was correlated well with higher scores on the actual examination. We also saw that score improvement was correlated with question bank usage for mandatory remediation residents, but not for the non-remediation cohort. This graph here on the left highlights this, showing the change in percent correct between the 2023 and 2024 ABSITE scores for our residents, standardized to the national median for training year, plotted against the number of questions that were completed, with a pretty good regression fit with this data. But unfortunately for the non-remediation cohort, we did not see the same thing. For the following academic year, we made some changes to our remediation program based on these findings. We noted that 5 residents with planned continuation in our residency program were included in the remediation program, and all of the residents within the residency program were provided with the same question bank in an effort to increase our control group size. Given the correlation between the number of questions completed and the performance improvement from the prior academic year, as well as the benefit of spaced question cadence, the program was shifted to include more frequent quizzes with an increased number of target questions to be reached before the ABSITE, and the other interventions remained the same. After the 2024 ABSITE, 3 of the 5 remediation residents improved percent correct in compared to the training year national median, and 2 of these residents improved their performance enough to no longer require ongoing remediation. Of note, the 3 residents that did remain in the remediation program had been in remediation the year prior as well. The number of practice questions we saw did not correlate well with ABSITE performance for this year. However, mock ABSITE performance again was correlated with official exam performance. Given these results, we concluded that implementation of a formal ABSITE remediation program demonstrated improvement in performance and avoidance of ongoing remediation for several residents within our program. During the first study year, heavy question bank use in a gradual fashion resulted in greater score improvement, and improvement appeared to be more profound for residents in remediation, suggesting benefit outside question bank use from the structured faculty mentoring and the cadence of question completion through the scheduled quizzes. Implementation of such a program allows for early intervention in residency and also in the academic year, which could lead to continued improvement throughout the remainder of training and in the months leading up to the ABSITE. Moving forward, we hope to investigate if there's any correlation between clinical performance and ABSITE performance. And given that several residents have remained in the remediation program across multiple academic years now, we're working to adapt to a more individualized remediation model to meet the unique needs of different learning styles and testing strategies. Also, given that mock ABSITE performance correlates well with official exam performance, we're working on a remediation model that allows for dynamic entry into and exit from remediation in real time within the academic year, rather than just waiting for ABSITE performance every year. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions.
Mark Naylor, Colorado, a nice presentation and a nice study. One question I have is, do you have any idea what you think is the sweet spot for the number of questions? Because I typically hear residents telling me they're doing some, unbelievable volume of questions and their scores aren't getting better. And I think, well, if you're doing that many questions, you're not really internalizing the information anyway. But, you said it was gradual over a period of time. Do you have an idea of how many questions someone should do a week?
Well,
might be good.
yeah, and so we identified that 1,500 number from our first study year, but then we saw in our second study year that we actually had a negative correlation between question bank use and performance. And so essentially what we concluded from that is that some residents might benefit very much from high volume question completion, and maybe that's not meeting the needs of other learners. So for our model, we think that there's a subset of residents who just need structured approach, and having these assigned quizzes spaced out throughout the year is really beneficial to them. And for these residents who remain in remediation, clearly bulk question use is not what's helping them. And that's why we're working to adapt this program to try to assess what their learning needs are, what their testing abilities are, and tailor it more because, yeah, bulk question use doesn't seem to work for everyone.
Good morning, Don Hess, Boston Medical Center. We found that more questions isn't always the answer, but the residents need to read. Can you tell me more about what they're doing with the faculty members in that second part of the intervention?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there is creation of formal individualized learning plans based on the prior ABSITE performance, so target areas to be studying, higher focus. Our program traditionally would just recommend reading resources, and through the faculty mentoring in this more formal program, they would set kind of like spaced out meetings with goals for what resources work best for them in terms of textbook reading, and have more, I guess, just formal assigned study techniques throughout that. And it again varies based on individual residents, which we found is what's probably working very well. But yeah, there's not a one size fits all. And like you said, bulk questions doesn't work for everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Luo from Tulane University, Overcoming the Challenges of EPA, a tool to increase the number of submissions.
Thank you so much for letting me present today.
Excuse me.
And good morning,
You could,
everyone.
remind, you have timer, thank you.
Okay. All right, and my disclosure is part of the studies funded by NIH. So everybody knows about competency-based medical education, how it relies on real-time workplace assessments. EPAs were introduced for assessing residents' readiness for clinical tasks through some medical assessment. However, the EPA submission rates still remains low, and it is especially challenging in some high volume and high acuity settings. So some of the barriers for EPA completion is time constraints, which lead to limited feedback opportunities. Variable faculty engagement lead to inconsistent evaluations, and some safety net hospital pressures has high turnovers and limited resources, and poor integration into a workflow, which lead to documentation burden of both resident and faculty members. So our study is based on a single academic general surgery residency at the Urban Tertiary Care Center, and it is a safety net hospital. Our population is all general surgery resident at our facility, which is 31 residents, and faculties who are involved in the EPA assessments. Our intervention began in January of 2024, which we integrated our weekly M&M presentation with the EPA submitted and completed listed by service. And our primary outcome is mean number of EPA submission and completion before and after this intervention. And our secondary outcome is a correlation of our EPA submission and completion to surgical case volume and complication rates. So a little bit about our tool. We embedded our EPA stats into a weekly M&M conference, and this offered a real-time display of EPA data. It contextualized the performance with actual clinical cases that was done that week, and it promoted accountability and more real-time discussion if one were to need. So this is kind of an example of what we would do. So the top is our service right there. It says acute care surgery. And we list the number of cases we did that week, 12 cases and 0 complications. And this is a part that we have already traditionally been doing for many years. So the next line is the intervention part that we integrated, which is at 7 EPA submitted, 7 completed. And this is entered by the resident on a weekly basis for our M&M presentation. So after this M&M integration, we show the increase in resident EPA submission numbers increased by 159%. The faculty completion number increased by 136%. And most importantly, this offer really no additional cost and really not a lot of major workflow changes. Our resident already do these M&M slide every week already, and it only adds maybe an additional minute or two to their M&M slides. The EPA activity correlated with clinical volume, but it did not correlate it with the complication rate. So this curve shows the number of EPA eligible cases throughout the course of 2024, which is after our implementation. And this curve is the number of EPA submission rate, which mirrors the trend of the total eligible cases. And this dotted line shows the average number of EPA submitted on a weekly basis, which is 8.1 before the implementation. And this shows the after implementation, which is 21 per week. So key takeaway is that our EPA integration into M&M is a sustainable strategy for improving assessment and culture in an especially demanding clinical setting. And why it works, we think, because it uses existing educational forums and it makes assessment visible, relevant, and creates a routine in the department. And it's a low burden, scalable model that other residency program can also adapt. Here are my references, and thank you again for letting me present this morning.
Marcy Feynman, Sinai Hospital, Baltimore. Thanks for that. I'm interested in what your breakdown of EPAs are between your like pre-op, intra-op, and post-op phases. And if this really focused, like nationally, intra-op is about 91% of the EPAs that are submitted. So did this just increase your intra-op or did it increase everything?
That's a great question, and that's something that we will look at for our next study for sure. But I think our number do mirror what you said about national trend. Most of them are still intra-op as well.
Hi, Dawn Elfenbein from the University of Wisconsin. Congratulations. It's great to be able to do these and instill new habits in folks. Was there a sense from the residents after that big jump in EPAs that either the number or the quality of the feedback they were actually getting was improved with that increased number?
Was there a feedback? Is that your
Yeah,
question?
did you guys go back to the residents and say, is it better? Are you getting better feedback?
Yeah, we are actually, we have a survey, actually we're gonna look at right now, that we did an internal resident survey, and they did give some insightful feedback, and we will definitely present that data shortly. But one of the things that I think we saw is the resident do value faculty who give them actual comments in the feedback instead of just entrustability score.
Last question.
Hi, good morning. I had a question. I just was curious if when you saw the increase in the EPA participation by, releasing stats in M&M Weekly, did you see a decrease in your CBME participation for milestone-based competencies?
That's definitely an interesting question. I did not look into that, but you gave me an idea for definitely my next project.
That would be great because we're seeing a relationship where those competency-based are dropping when EPAs are going up. So
I see.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Dr. Powell at Sinai Hospital, Baltimore. Presentation on worksheet-based delivery system to improve basic science, a multi-institutional study.
Good morning. This is essentially a PowerPoint presentation about how we should not be using PowerPoint presentations to teach residents. I have nothing to disclose. And so this project all started because we found that our residents were very dissatisfied with our basic science lectures. And so we asked, what is the learning style that works best for them that would make them like education more? We found that none of the residents found that they learned best from lectures. This makes sense knowing that general surgery residents in general are accommodating and converging type learners, which both of those use active experimentation to learn best. So right now, our lectures look a lot like the one on the left, which is teaching in a classroom like this, where we know that we kind of learn best in the OR and actually doing things and doing cases. So we presented this last year just looking at our program using worksheets that were done as a group during education time instead of doing lectures. And this is what it looked like in our program. So we would sit around in a group. We have a pretty small program. So if you have a bigger program, you should maybe separate into smaller groups. But we were able to do it as a big group. And we went through these worksheets together. They followed the SCORE curriculum. So it was whatever the SCORE topic was of the week. This is what they looked like. So it was a case kind of similar to like an oral board style question. So this started with a patient that seems to have melanoma. The questions were designed so that you could ask them to either like med students or senior level residents based on their experience. So we would maybe ask a medical student, what do the ABCDs stand for? And then maybe a chief resident, what are your surgical steps going to be? In our program, we found that residents found this much more consistent with their learning style and much more engaging. And so we wanted to see if this was true with more programs and also programs of different types. And so we collaborated with 2 other programs, an academic program and a community hospital. And we found that all of our endpoints were statistically significant. So residents found them more engaging, more consistent with their learning style, subjectively improved knowledge, and was translatable to patient care, allowed less time in independent study. There were a couple of outliers in the community program. So everything moved in the correct direction, but there were 2 things that were not statistically significant. One was that they didn't find the education to be as translatable to patient care. We found in the comments on our survey that we did that they didn't always have attendings present during their education time. And so that was something that we found to be very helpful, was having an attending present to kind of add real life experience to the education time. And then another thing was in the comment section, they noted that they weren't printing off the worksheets ahead of time. And the idea of the worksheets is that it makes education time more hands-on. The residents are able to fill it out either before or during education time. And so if they weren't being printed out ahead of time, that would kind of decrease the level of engagement. So as far as future directions go, the first thing we want to do is make these more available for more programs and more residents to use. We're in early conversations with the team at SCORE about how we could have these worksheets added to their platform so that they're available to surgery residents and available ahead of time so that they can be done before education time. And then we're also wanting to look into what makes these most beneficial to residents. And we think that those things would be having an attending present to add that extra level of experience and insight. And then also having the worksheets printed out ahead of time. And then having 2 residents and definitely a senior resident being an expert on the topic ahead of time so that they can really help walk everyone through the case. Are there any questions?
Jason Kempnick, UT San Antonio. So how do you maintain engagement with the worksheets? Like, is there accountability for the resident who chooses not to do their worksheet ahead of time?
Yeah, good question. So when we started the worksheets, we did not make it a requirement for people to do it ahead of time, but we asked the residents, if you did it ahead of time, did you find that you were able to be more engaged? They said yes, which, I mean, no shock there. And so the second year that we used the worksheets, we did ask the residents to do them ahead of time to be more prepared. We didn't do any kind of like punishment or anything if they didn't do them. But that's something that in the future, looking forward, there maybe the like program administrator or a chief education resident should be looking to see if the residents have done them ahead of time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you all.
Just as a reminder, as we're doing this, if you can scan the QR code, if you have it on the back of your badge, to score our presentations for the award at the end. We'll move on to our next presentation by Dr. Khani from Washington University in St. Louis, evaluating the quality of AI-generated scenarios for mock oral boards examinations.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the organizing committee for the opportunity. My name is Usman Pani, and I'll be talking about evaluating the quality of AI written scenarios for virtual mock oral exams. So mock oral exams have been shown to be effective in improving ABS certifying exam pass rates and in identifying high-risk patients, residents for early intervention. They can be held as either monthly events within the residency cycle where residents and faculty volunteer to participate, or they are usually held as multi-institutional events where residents participate in a simulated exam scenario and are examined by an outside faculty. However, organizing these mock orals requires faculty participation not only as examiners, but also in writing these clinical scenarios and questions, which takes time away from their faculty clinical responsibilities. So we asked whether AI could help us unburden the faculty and write clinical scenarios for our mock oral examinations. To do so, I used ChatGPT in May of 2024 to generate scenarios. And one of the examples is shown here where I'm asking ChatGPT to generate an acute cholecystitis case. The first part focuses on operative decision-making. The second part focuses on resident encountering intraoperative bile duct injury. And in the third part, they have to describe their plan for long-term management of the bile duct injury. And the prompt that I got was something like this. It was very self-explanatory. All the details were in the prompt, in the response generated by ChatGPT, and it also provided me with specific questions. So once that strategy was established, I then developed further 11 scenarios to a total of 12 scenarios across various subspecialties, as shown here. And after that, we decided to see if ChatGPT generated questions could perform as well as the faculty generated questions. So we used our citywide mock orals as an opportunity to do that. Traditionally in St. Louis, WashU Medicine and St. Louis University organize these events each year, and they're held virtually similar to the ABS certifying exams. Senior residents from both programs participated. They were assigned to 4 virtual stations. Each station had 2 faculty. And participants were asked 2 questions per examiner at 2 different stations, to a total of 8 questions. And prior to incorporating these AI scenarios, we had our faculty, namely the program director and the APDs, review these questions for accuracy, and then we combined them with the faculty written scenarios and randomly assigned them to various rooms as shown here. In blue, you can see the faculty scenarios, and in red, you see the AI scenarios. Both examiners and test takers were blinded to the true authorship. And when we looked at the data of the usage of these questions, we found that across all stations, AI questions were being more frequently asked of the residents compared to the faculty written scenarios. And on the left side, when we looked at the most frequently asked scenarios specifically, 3 of the 5 most commonly asked scenarios were AI written. We then asked faculty to rate the complexity of these scenarios, and namely, we asked them in 2 sets. One was the clinical scenario and the transition of the question, and the other was the management-specific questions. And we found that 40% of the AI scenarios and 42% of the faculty scenarios were considered level appropriate for a PGY-4 or PGY-5 by the faculty. Similarly, 65% of the AI and 64% of the faculty management questions were considered level appropriate for the purpose of this exam. We then asked residents to rate the most difficult scenarios that they faced during their exams. And I know we biased ourselves by having the neck trauma case as a faculty question, but 56% of the residents listed faculty scenarios and 43% of the residents listed AI scenarios as the most difficult cases they were asked. And in order to determine their perceptions of the authorship of these questions, we asked the faculty and residents, okay, so who wrote these questions? And 17% of the faculty correctly identified AI scenarios. 28% of the faculty correctly identified faculty scenarios as faculty written, but there was a high rate of misclassification across both groups. And I then performed Wilcoxon-Ransom test to see if there was any trends in these responses across their distribution. And as you can see from the p-value, the responses were not significantly different. Similarly, residents also had difficulty identifying who the author of these questions was. 21% of them correctly identified AI scenarios, and 41% of them correctly identified the faculty scenarios. But again, there was a very high rate of misidentification. So in conclusion, ChatGPT successfully generated Oroboth-style surgical scenarios for our mock oral exams. Examiners in a blinded setting preferred AI-written scenarios over faculty-written scenarios, and these AI scenarios match faculty scenarios in complexity. and participants could not reliably distinguish between the true authorship of these set of questions. And using AI to generate these mock oral scenarios could help us promote use of mock oral exams to practice across other programs. Thank you.
Scott Shimke from Rush. Really interesting and definitely some huge potential here. Question for you. We've been talking about AI and like the sources of where it comes from and how legitimate it is. The thing I'd be more worried about is the scenarios it comes up with are completely wrong or false or just not correct. So you said it's reviewed by your team. Did you guys find that there's a lot of false information? Did you have to redo the AI scenarios? Like how accurate were they?
Not in most of the cases. I didn't show the example, but there was a case which was focused on the ethical considerations of an old lady with small bowel ischemia and the discussion about the futility. And in that scenario, the AI gave vitals of 120/80 in terms of blood pressure. So that was the only thing that we had to correct and prompt. But otherwise, everything else was generated the right way. And I think it also helped that when I was putting in the prompts, I specified, right, an or both style scenarios. So whatever data sets it was trying to sift the data out from, it was doing it from the data which is relevant to the oral boards type exam generation. So prompt writing helped with that, but we did not find many other differences.
In the interest of time, we'll need to move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Dr. Barter from Duke University, creating a needs-based curriculum to support general surgery preliminary residents.
Hi there. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present. I want to share that this work was funded by the internal Duke SEEDS program, Sustaining Equity, Elevating Diversity in Surgery. A non-designated preliminary year in surgery is frequently viewed as a year-long interview, where these residents are balancing the workload of being a new surgical intern, all the while identifying a permanent categorical position. As a result, these preliminary residents need enhanced support and mentorship to optimize their experience and reach their professional goals. Non-designated preliminary residents from the last 7 years were asked to share their positive and negative experiences via email or phone call for our program to understand how our program supported former preliminary residents. During these interviews, the themes explored included recruitment, clinical rotation, support and mentorship to obtain letters of recommendation for reapplication, as well as support to find a subsequent position, as well as and visa concerns and differences in treatment from categorical residents. 9 of the 17 former non-designated preliminary residents provided feedback, and from this we were able to identify areas for emphasis as well as improvement. The residents highlighted the advantage of our tailored schedules in early parts of the year, which allowed for exploration in specialties of interest and obtaining letters of recommendation. They also emphasized the importance of transparency throughout the preliminary year for their role, as well as the expectations for trajectory. We also identified some specific logistical issues that harmed their experience. There was a year where the preliminary class didn't have their names on their white coats. There were some issues with obtaining educational funding for step 3, as well as participation in the FLS exam in their intern year. We also identified that there were 2 email listservs, one for preliminary residents and one for categorical residents, which meant that oftentimes preliminary residents were inadvertently excluded from program-wide communications. So while dealing with some of these logistical issues at the program level, we wanted to respond to this feedback by providing more focused opportunities to support our preliminary residents throughout their time with us. This program included monthly meetings in the first 3 months, followed by every other month meetings. The program was protected by the program director from clinical duties, and the dates for these meetings were communicated very early with the service chief as well as the administrative chief for those months. All the current preliminary residents were invited to attend these meetings, as well as the former preliminary residents that stayed on as categorical residents in our program or other programs at our institution. This fostered opportunities for peer and near-peer mentorship. Educational leadership were also present, such as a prelim-focused assistant program director who is present at specific meetings for check-ins throughout the reapplication progress. As well as a former prelim faculty member who did not have any influence on the reapplication process. Here we present our longitudinal peer mentorship curriculum for our preliminary residents. The curriculum starts by setting the scene for the prelim experience in the first month of intern year, which rotations are important to do your best in, to get early letter requests, keeping eye on deadlines and the ABSITE performance. We offered a networking dinner with key departmental leadership to allow potential letter connections to be made early. We had a session to discuss preparing and finalizing the application with former preliminary residents and preparing for interviews. That was with our dedicated preliminary APD. And in the every other month sessions, we continue to meet with the residents to offer guidance and field questions or problems that needed to be handled at a program level. At the conclusion of the curriculum, we have planned a celebration dinner for the whole program to thank and congratulate our preliminary interns on their service and efforts. In conclusion, the experiences of our former preliminary residents have influenced the way we support our current mentorship strategies, and peer mentorship can be a valuable resource to support preliminary resident success. Non-designated preliminary residents offer a great service to general surgery programs, and in return, they deserve intentional programming and support from our institutions. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions.
Mark Naylor, Colorado. One thing that I think we found helpful over the years is to use alumni who've been prelims. And so I'll actually have them during SOAP reach out to the people we're talking to, and they will tell them what their experience was and their journey and things like that. And that seems to be incredibly valuable and useful.
Yes, we do this as well throughout the pre-intern weeks following the SOAP. But we found that having those same residents physically present during dedicated protected times also served as an excellent opportunity for those prelims to feel supported throughout their intern year and have easy access to mentorship. Thank you.
Jed Collada from Milwaukee. Really great presentation.
Thank you.
One thing I'm very mindful of when we have these programs for preliminary residents or other at-risk residents such as underrepresented minorities is for mentorship and peer mentorship or faculty mentorship being burdensome to some of those faculty members or residents that are part of that community. Is the faculty participation voluntary? How do you make sure that all the preliminary stress is on one faculty member who represents that community?
Yeah. So the assistant program director has some protected FTE to be able to support these prelims as a part of her role as APD. Otherwise, it's a labor of love. And so those who feel really passionately about supporting prelims are able to attend in this protected way where there's food and collaboration and camaraderie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our final presentation is by Dr. Sampson from Geisinger Wyoming Valley Hospital. A simple reminder, program initiatives to increase EPA assessment submissions.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Okay. Okay, I have no disclosures. So the evaluation of surgical trainees is based on core competencies and milestones. The American Board of Surgery launched the Entrustable Professional Activities, or the EPA project, in 2023. And the EPA reports will be required for all general surgery residents that will be graduating in 2028 in order to sit for the ABS exam. And the Society for Improving Medical Professional Learning, or the SIMPLE app, is used to log the EPA evaluations. What we wanted to see was if implementing a reminder sign around our hospitals would improve the simple EPA submissions for resident assessment. Well, our goal was to create a cost-effective intervention that will increase faculty and resident engagement with the SIMPLE app in order to increase the provision and feedback to residents, as well as improve the quality, as well as the variety of feedbacks they receive. So we designed and posted a simple reminder sign in high visible areas all around our OR sync sites, as well as all the computers residents sit at. And this is conducted at 3 hospitals. This is to encourage sync-side conversation as well as interoperative conversations between faculty members and then residents. And we had 26 general surgery residents as well as approximately 30 faculty members that were involved. And then we used the EPA submitted over 120 days. And then we compared the 30-day submissions prior to our intervention, which acted as a baseline, to the 30, 60, and 90 days post-intervention submissions. All right. Here on the left, you see the reminder sign that we designed. It has the major EPA categories for preoperative, intraoperative, postoperative, and then a category we labeled other to include trauma and procedures. This is all designed using Microsoft PowerPoint. The items that we used in order to print and laminate the signs were all purchased from Amazon, and the table on the right that you see the total cost to get all of these. And it was about $51. And below, the table 2 shows the period which we conducted the study. So I apologize. All right. The result of our study demonstrates an overall increase in the number of EPA assessments after the initiation of the project. As you can see on the table on the right, there are 234 submissions total. 24 were actually prior to our intervention. And then you see that the highest number of EPA submissions was seen 60 days post-intervention on the graph, as you can see over here. And then the highest was observed in the interop category, which accounted about 71%, which does make sense because we spend most of our time in the operating room. And this was consistent across all the study period. Next, we compared the number of EPA submissions across PGY levels. The highest proportion of assessments were completed by PGY2 residents. This is shown in this orange here, about 32%. Next is the PGY5 class, which is about 28%. Notably, the PGY2 class are the 2028 class that will be sitting for the ABS exam and will need EPA reports, so this does make sense. The PGY5, not so much, but I am in my last year of training, and I'm part of this project, and I will disclose I did use the simple reminders for the intended purpose whenever I did the cases. And last, we evaluated the number of free text comments used in the simple app by faculty. If the comment section was used, the faculty answered yes, and if not, they answered no. 72% answered yes. And as you can see, this is the gold bar on the graph, and this shows that there was a consistent increase after our intervention. And the comment section is valuable as it adds for additional source of constructive feedback for residents. So in conclusion, the simple reminder signs were successfully integrate EPAs into daily clinical workflow. They're cost-effective and feasible tool for the utilization of the simple app. They remind faculty and residents of the importance of faculty engagement and these sync-side and interop conversations. They also remind faculty the value of frequent formative assessment of proficiency and readiness for independent practice. Future prospect can evaluate the longitudinal impact of the study. Since this was done over 4 months, I think it's important to see the actual impact on resident readiness for independent practice. And then encourage, hopefully, for ACGME to expand on the EPA micro assessments, because currently there are 18, and there's still some categories that need to be included so that residents can be well assessed on all types of surgical techniques and procedures. Thank you.
Hi, Kia Nicholson from University of Pittsburgh. 2 questions for you. One, do you have a sense of whether there was more of an increase among faculty or resident initiation of EPAs after you posted the signs?
What was the last part, sorry?
Was it more faculty or more residents that initiated more after you posted the signs?
It has to be more resident initiated. It's more of, hey, I would like to discuss how I will approach this case, and I would like to discuss the scenarios for this case with the faculty. There are some certain faculties that are very good at initiating that conversation, but I think we have a lot of room to improve so that more faculty and residents are equally engaging in these conversations.
And my second question is, have you considered posting signs elsewhere to increase intraoperative and postoperative EPAs rather than just intraoperative?
So currently we have them at the 3 hospitals in all the sync sites, and then all the computers that in the OR and the workrooms and the preoperative work areas. So I think that covers a lot of the areas that all of our residents and faculty sit at. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes our session of Tools of the Trade. As a final reminder, if you can vote for the best paper for the session on your QR code, and let's give one more round of applause to our presenters, please. Thank you.